Well, welcome. We are live. I am Caeresa Richardson, one of the women's business counselors at the Wise Women's Business Center, and you are joining us for a discussion on real estate development with Christine Stevens at VIP Development. So I'm really excited to talk about this topic. It's a topic that I personally have interest in, as you know, Christine. But before we jump into it, why don't I just give a brief introduction for those who are new to WISE? Welcome. If you are on the Zoom or watching us on Facebook, we want this to be interactive. So please feel free to leave questions in the chat box. We will answer them throughout. The WISE Women's Business Center is a business center run for women by women. So we provide training and development as well as one-on-one business coaching for women entrepreneurs in our area. So it's a great center. Please come and check us out. Most of our development opportunities right now are all virtual. So it's a very convenient way to get plugged in. So with that said, Christine, welcome. I would love to turn the floor over to you to just give us a brief introduction about yourself, your background, VIP, and then we'll jump into the discussion about real estate development.
Okay, thank you for having me. WISE is a completely amazing organization, and Caeresa, thanks to you, I know a little bit about the organization, and I'm so glad to be here doing anything I can to help you and the causes that are important to you and the women of WISE. I am currently serving at VIP Structures as the Senior Vice President for Construction and the General Manager of the construction company. VIP is an integrated company. We have an architecture firm, engineering firm, construction company, and a real estate development company. I've been here for 6 years. I have just recently moved back to being in the construction division, but I spent several years here at the company working in the real estate division. I now will work on both projects that are development and construction. Prior to that, I was working for another local real estate developer. I was there for 8 years, and when I left there, I was the director of real estate. So altogether, about 15 years in the field of real estate development right here in Syracuse, which is where I was born and raised. I'm one of the left at college and was gone for a long time and came back. So I'm a come home to Syracuse alum. That is that's a little bit about me. Yeah.
Tons of years in real estate development, which is why I'm so excited to have you and your level of expertise sort of guiding us. And I'm really hoping that many of the women on the phone, on our call today at Zoom and in the Facebook leave tons of questions, because honestly, you are getting a gem with Christine. So Christine, why don't we start by first, if you can give us your nugget, how would you define real estate development to this group of women entrepreneurs?
Okay, I thought, and you and I talked about this a little bit, I would talk about, well, there's real estate and then there's real estate development. Given your audience here of membership, I am sure that there are people who have a specific real estate need. You need a lease, you need to own a building, you need to find something. That's having a very specific real estate need, presumably to serve a business purpose, right? As an entrepreneur. Of course, we all have real estate needs for our housing situation. Are we renting an apartment? Are we owning a house, etc.? There are also people who are real estate investors, people who want to own a portfolio of real estate to generate income. And that is certainly, there are people who will go buy, for example, multifamily houses and become landlords, and they are real estate investors. Where when we're talking about real estate development, there's an act of creating something. And we can hear what the audience would like to talk about, but broadly, you're buying a piece of property, could be raw land, could be an existing building of any type, small or large, but you are going to develop it into something that it currently is not. If it's a piece of raw land, you envision putting a building on it. If it's a building, maybe you're going to rehabilitate it. Maybe it was a factory, you're going to turn it into an apartment building. It's the act of having an idea, looking at a piece of property, developing it into something other than what it is currently. And typically the goal is to make money in doing so. That's how I would describe it really broadly.
So really, it sounds like, oh, go ahead, Christine.
Lots of, right? I mean, retail, medical, hospitality, residential, industrial, right? Anything, in lots of different sectors, people are having real estate needs. Sometimes people are doing real estate development for their own need. They own a manufacturing company. They need multiple sites across the nation. They have people on staff who are going to develop the sites they need across the nation for manufacturing facilities. Other times what happens, for example, National Coffee Shop knows that it wants to be in a certain number of markets, and the coffee shop company doesn't want to be in the business of real estate. So they will hire real estate developers. They will say, I need locations in these 6 markets, go find them, buy them, develop them, and I will be the tenant in them. And then other cases, people are doing real estate development with the goal of turning something into something it's not and selling it and letting somebody else own it. So multiple different ways to think about it, but it's all creating something new with the goal of making some money at it.
Excellent. That's such a great summary. For me, I feel like to put that into a sentence, it's more about the intent. So what is the intent of the person when they purchase this property? So is it just to fill a specific business need, or is it the intent to create, like you said? Right. So it's almost a bit of artistry in it.
Yes, right. There's some vision, right? And some people are just have the vision of looking at something and seeing what it could be. Others, I would say, are more, real estate developers for hire. They're working for somebody who has a need, and then they have to plan it and execute it to meet their client's need, right?
So, Christine, going in a little bit, talking about if I am a woman entrepreneur interested in getting into real estate development, what are some things that you would say I should consider?
Well, if we talk a little bit just about the process, I think if I explain the process a little bit, it will help people understand there's a lot more to it maybe than meets the eye. I would break it down into sort of 3 big general chapters of the process. First chapter is kind of pre-development. Hopefully before you have purchased something, you have done a whole lot of homework on it. What is your idea? Do market conditions support your idea? What do you know about all kinds of government regulations that might impact your idea? There are things that come into play, for example, zoning. Is the use that you have for the property allowable within the current zoning regulations? What do you know about environmental conditions? What do you know about the building itself in terms of what your design ideas are, how much they're going to cost, right? You should, before you purchase anything, you will need to be doing a whole lot of homework to make sure that your idea is financially viable. And what do you know, really an analysis of how much is it going to cost me to develop the project, acquisition, legal, soft costs, design costs, construction costs. And then once this project is completed, what does the income look like? Are you going to be able to pay back the bank loan that you took for the construction and the cost associated with the development? Is that coming from rental income? Are you going to be able to pay the bank back and still make some money? So a whole lot of work goes into things in advance. And I will say what people don't realize is that lots of real estate developers spend lots of time working on projects that never come to fruition. And I think that's completely lost on people because we tend to look at the projects that did make it across the finish line. But you have to realize for every one project that gets across the finish line, there might be countless other attempts, other buildings, other pieces of land, things that never see the light of day. There's a lot of risk then that clearly goes with getting into real estate development because you're spending a whole lot of time and effort on things that might never yield you a return. So I would say in general, it's not for the faint of heart. There needs to be a certain degree of risk tolerance and patience and perseverance, right? Then sort of chapter 2 would be while the project is underway, maybe you've decided you are going to pull the trigger, you are going to be able to get a bank loan, you are going to be able to buy something, you've got an architect, you've got an engineer, you've got somebody building a project for you, whatever the improvements are, and you're paying the bank back as you're borrowing the money to pay for it. And then sort of the last end of it, and you should think through this before you've purchased something, what does the end game look like for you? If you're wanting to own an apartment building, who's going to manage the building? Who's going to lease it up with tenants? Who's going to take care of the tenants? And sort of to what degree do you want to be involved in that? To what extent can you be outsourcing that? Did you intend to hold on to it or did you intend to then sell it as a completed project at the end? You want to think through the whole process before you sort of undertake anything. Yeah.
That is such an awesome description of that first part, that pre-development piece. So
Yeah.
let's get into, okay, I've got my idea. I've met with all of the folks, and I'd love for you to talk about who all of the folks should be. So who should be on our team? We talk about this at WISE a lot, what's called our BAIL team. So your banker, accountant, investor, and lawyer. So actually, I'd like to pause there. What would you say for real estate development? Who should we be considering on our core team?
All of those people and then some, right? So yeah, I mean, there are attorneys who specialize in real estate. And I always say this in the real estate field, the way I say in a medical field. If you had cancer, you might not be going to a general practitioner. If you needed a cardiologist, you wouldn't go to an oncologist, right? There are attorneys who specialize in things, and you definitely should be getting an attorney who specializes in real estate generally. And then even within people who work in real estate, there are people who work in terms of what we call the right to build, zoning and permitting and approvals processes, environmental regulations. It's really a specialized field. So you want to make sure that you're getting the right attorney. When it comes to a financial analysis, right, there are accountants, sure, but an accountant isn't going to talk to you about market conditions, right? What does the local market say about how much an apartment could rent for? Or what does the market say about how much rent a commercial tenant would pay in the first floor of a building? You really need to make sure that you're either doing the research yourself and validating it, or finding people who can speak really intelligently to you about the market so that you're understanding what the income side of things will look like. Additionally, you'll really need to understand construction costs, right? If we're talking about real estate development, to some degree or another, we're talking about construction cost, and you will need trusted advisors who can help you understand what does the design of this project look like and what will its construction budget be. I think people really tend to underestimate sort of what is involved as time goes by. Of the more detail you have about what you're doing, then the more clear you can be with a construction estimate. But certainly if you're finding people who are trusted advisors, even at the outset, they can help guide you. But we call it big picture, back of the envelope math of, is this idea gonna work? And what people tend to forget is, unless you're independently wealthy and you can finance it all yourself, you need a bank. And so having a good relationship with a bank that would do the kind of lending you would need, the bank, in order to give you a loan, just like if you're buying a house, right? You're going to go buy a house. Everybody knows what that process looks like of dealing with the bank, and the bank making sure that the house is worth what you want to pay for it, and that the people buying the house have the income that can support paying back the mortgage. You go through this process in commercial lending, but times 100. So you really want to be establishing relationships with people who are in commercial lending, and hopefully before you spend too much time going down a path only to find that it's not viable. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Such great points. Great points, Christine. So let's get into what would you say is the step 2? So you've got this pre-development piece. What's the next step?
So, yeah, I mean, really, that's where, I hate to say it, it's where all the time and the energy and the effort is going. If you get to the point where the project is viable and you're able to get a loan, you clearly want to make sure that there aren't going to be cost overruns, right? You want to make sure that you've hired a team, designers, construction professionals, people who are going to be either you or people you trust managing the project for you, getting through construction, hopefully with no surprises, no hiccups, on schedule, on budget, agreed upon scope. These are key things. I mean, the pandemic is wreaking havoc still in the construction industry. Shortages of materials, things that are needed, price increases. Things are starting to settle down, but there have been definitely a lot of surprises, and still people are experiencing surprises right now in our industry. You would want somebody who can help you mitigate through that, people who know what they're doing and where the hot spots are going to be. And then, moving on to chapter 3, really thinking through as you're closing out a project, if you're building a building, as you're closing out the project, the authorities will come and do their necessary inspections to make sure that all the life safety systems are in place, that the building can now be inhabited by human beings, right? Fire alarms, sprinklers, handicap accessibility, everything that's needed by code. And we could spend a lot of time just talking about the building code, but this building has been built as it was designed, and it meets all the requirements of the authorities for human beings to be in here safely. And then you go into the mode of what we call in the real estate industry, the property management mode of, now the building's complete, you're maybe moving a tenant into it. The tenant now is moving their furniture and their equipment and their people into the building. And you, for example, if you're going to be the landlord, you, depending on how the lease is structured, you might have a lot of responsibilities for janitorial services, snow plowing, landscaping, repairs and maintenance on HVAC equipment, all of the services that go with keeping a building in good order with happy tenants, and also things that people would never even consider: boilers needing to be inspected, elevators needing to be inspected, fire extinguishers needing to be inspected. There's a whole lot. Property management is its own field, and there are people in the real estate industry who have full-time jobs that are property management, keeping buildings full, keeping buildings functioning, looking at costs, helping to contain the costs, but also keeping the building owner and the building occupants happy. Yeah,
Awesome.
Sorry, that was a lot. That was a mouthful, but there.
I mean, well, it is a lot. And, speaking about it specifically, it's very intimidating for anyone to consider going into this industry, but definitely for women going into this industry. There are not really a lot of us. Can you speak a little bit about that? So what help do you think, if someone is interested in this, what help do you think exists? How could someone go about getting, dipping their toe into getting started? How do people get into I was thinking, well, how do people even get into this industry to begin with?
Some, right, people,
You're like,
there are
why would anyone do this?
there are people who, right, there are people get into, some people get into I'll just different career paths that come to mind. Some people go into real estate brokerage, and I think you told me you had a real estate broker who was a guest on the show, right?
Yeah.
So brokerage, I mean, I think a lot of people, if you've ever purchased a home, you know what it's like to have a real estate broker. You're the buyer or you're the seller, and you have a familiarity with that role. In the commercial world, it's the same function. There are people in commercial real estate who are commercial real estate brokers, and they are helping people find land or buildings to lease or to own or to develop. So it's very common that people come from the brokerage world. If you're at all we need more women in commercial brokerage. It's still very male dominated. Our industry, right? Architecture, engineering, construction, real estate development, commercial real estate brokerage, still very male dominated. So I would encourage any woman who's interested in this field to call me, call you, call other people, maybe see if real estate brokerage is interesting to you. You can just go online, register for the course. New York State has a salesperson course that you can take. I think I've taken that class. People go into that class thinking that they're going to teach you how to sell real estate. And that is not the case. It's not a real estate sales class. It's really helping you understand the laws that govern the state of New York when you are acting as somebody's agent, when you have a legal and ethical responsibility to represent that person in a transaction, and you have to understand the laws of New York State and terminology in the industry. That would be a great way, I think, for people to just get some exposure to some real estate concepts and see if it's interesting to them. Another way people get into it, people go to work for property managers, and you end up learning a lot about leasing buildings and taking care of buildings. Maybe you get the idea that you're going to own a building yourself. There are people who get into real estate development, again, right? If you're a broker, like the coffee shop example, you've been working now for Starbucks for decades, helping them find the new locations and pairing them up with a developer who's going to build their building for them. Maybe you decide you're going to be the person who's going to build that building, right? You're going to have the capital and the skills to know what that client needs. You're going to find their new location. And instead of having somebody else do everything that goes into buying the land, getting the approvals for the land, getting the building designed, getting it built, getting it managed on the back end, you're going to do that yourself. And then certainly in the construction field, there are people who get into construction and then they move into real estate development as a natural outcome of sort of working for clients. So any of those, talk to people who are property managers, talk to people who are brokers, maybe talk to people in the construction industry. Maybe just if you know people who are landlords, talk to people who are landlords, and grow where your areas of interest are and get more exposure.
That's very great. So it's almost like this three-pronged, if you were going to get an informal degree, right, in real estate development, it's hitting the commercial, the brokerage piece, the property management piece, and the construction piece, and collecting those skill sets along the way.
Right. And I would say you don't have to be an expert at any one of, if you have the right, Jilly, I'm a firm believer that anybody, certainly anybody who, if you really want to learn something, you will learn it, right? You have an entrepreneurial crowd here, and people I think will be very driven to learn. As long as, like you say, you're surrounded by trusted people who know what they're doing, maybe you don't need to know everything in great detail. Learn what you want to learn, what you are interested in, what you gravitate toward, and then, like anything, round out your skills with the skills of others, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's with anything in life.
With anything in life, right?
With skills and knowledge and apply it how you want. Yeah. So talking about, circling back to capital, because in my opinion, real estate development, or real estate in general, but definitely development, is a very capital intensive industry to play around in. So how would you or why don't we try to summarize a little bit about some of the things, in addition to, like you said, purchasing the property, there are other things to consider in terms of capital that you will need, and then ways that people can acquire that capital, if you know of any, to start off their real estate development projects.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the world is, it's this old adage, it takes money to make money, right? I mean, it is the fact of real, right? That is so real. It takes some money to make some money. Everybody's familiar. I'm going to say most people are familiar with buying a house. In order to buy a house, you need to have what's called equity, right? The bank is not going to loan you all of the money. They're going to loan you a portion of the money. For your real estate development project, there's the cost of buying the building, but then, like I mentioned, there are all these other costs that go with the project: design fees, construction fees, legal, insurance, property taxes, bank fees, attorney fees. I mean, it's just endless list. So you are going to need to have some money that you're bringing to the equation that is the money that you can't borrow at all. So where does that money come from? And there are people who do actually invest in real estate. Getting hooked up with those people, if you're not able to, if you don't bring your own money to the table where you're bringing your own equity to a project, then can you get connected with people who are interested in real estate development, and can you partner with them so that they're bringing their cash to the table, and very often they will be expecting a return on their investment, that you're basically, are they going to remain partners in the project till the end, or can you sort of borrow their money in the short run and get the project off the ground and then pay them back on the back end? There are lots of different ways to structure things financially, but I mean, I will be honest and say that the capital investment is definitely a deterrent, what they call in economics, a barrier to entry, right? And navigating that, and certainly having a good relationship with banks and attorneys and talking to people in the industry who can help point you in the right direction is pretty key. Is that helpful at all? We could spend all day on that topic.
You definitely can, yeah. But no, that's very, very helpful. I would love to be able to wrap in some examples that you have, like some real world examples of real estate development projects, locally or non-local, that you like to bring up. And then I'd love to see if we have any questions.
Yeah, okay, sure. Here's just an example of how a project works. And it was one of the last big development projects that we did here at VIP. There was a company called Cryomech, born and raised right here in Syracuse, New York. They had been founded in the 60s. They had grown. They were occupying 3 separate little buildings over in East Syracuse. They had outgrown the facility. As a company, it didn't necessarily make sense for them to design a facility and own a facility, because maybe the capital for that business made more sense, in R&D, in product development, staff, right? They didn't necessarily need to own the real estate. So they decide that they want a new building. They're prepared to rent the building. They don't need to own it. And they know that their area of expertise is designing and manufacturing cryogenic equipment, not finding land, getting approvals, designing a building, owning a building. It's not their skill set. So they will hire somebody, VIP, this is a real project. They hire VIP, and we work with them through the whole process. How much space do you think you need? How much office space? How much manufacturing space? Will you grow? How much will you grow? By when? Let's figure out how many square feet you need. How much power do you need? You're a manufacturing facility. Let's talk to National Grid. Does National Grid have the power at certain locations that you might be looking at that you're going to be able to build this new facility? Okay, let's find land. We need a building that's this big, but we need land. we need land for parking, and we need land to meet New York State's guidelines, environmental requirements for stormwater management. So, okay, we need 10 acres. Let's go find the land. Where do you want to be? Close to a highway, close to a throughway, airport? What do you need? Find the land, get it under contract, build the building, design the building, build the building, get it all approved by the state authorities and the municipal authorities. And then on the back end, be able to move the tenant into the space. And then they start paying rent. Working through that whole time, the financial arrangement. What will the lease be? What will the lease payments be? And does it make sense that the cost of the project is basically, amortized over time through a lease payment? Is it going to work both for the tenant and their budget and for the landlord and its investment? So we do here at VIP, we do that a lot, working with a client on what we call a price check. This is the vision, this is the budget. Are they aligning? Are the needs and the budget and the financial realities aligning? And then we can proceed baby steps, one step at a time, and stay united till we reach the point where we're sure that we actually have a project. The tenant can sign a lease, the landlord will buy the land, where the bank is on board, the bank is going to give us the money to get it built, and then have a permanent mortgage when we're done with the construction on it. That's an example of a project. And now Cryomec is out there off the thruway and they have a brand new facility. I know you and I, Caeresa, you and I have a passion for projects that are in cities that are rehabilitations of buildings, right? For those of us who have a passion for community development, urban development, it's been really exciting for me, having been born and raised in Syracuse and been here in the last 15 years, to watch the revitalization of parts of the city of Syracuse with investors investing in our community and taking buildings that were once dilapidated, falling apart, and investing the funds to rehabilitate those buildings. Things are now mixed use. We have a lot of apartments. We have people moving downtown. I personally get very passionate around real estate development as it relates to community development. And I know that's something that you and I sort of share philosophically, right? I am a big advocate for some of the public policy tools that make that happen. I don't know if people realize that there's a thing called the historic tax credits. Sorry, I realized the sun is behind me there.
I just thought you were an angel. You were beaming, talking about this subject that both you and I love so much.
You could tell me, Christine, move the camera. I'm looking at you, not at myself, right? The historic tax credits, there's a tax credit at the state level and at the federal level. And those tax credits have really been instrumental in helping the developer bring on what we were talking about, some of the equity, some of the capital to make those projects happen. Without those tax credits, I think a lot of the revitalization that we have seen in downtown Syracuse would not have been possible. So for me, that public policy angle, the community development angle, and thinking about real estate as one important factor in community development is so crucial, right? And now if we're getting more employers who want to buy buildings downtown, we're investing in the real estate, but I think everybody is also hoping that sort of rising tide lifting all boats, that now there's more of a real estate property tax base. Is that good for schools? Is that good for services? Are there employers who are coming downtown who are creating jobs? And are those jobs helping to uplift the city of Syracuse? You and I are both passionate, I know, about the relationship between real estate development and community development. So, and there are endless examples of those here in Syracuse. I'm working on another one. Our company has purchased the Post Standard building, the old newspaper building on Clinton Square. And that building has, the newspaper still occupies a portion of it, but the portion that faces the square has been vacant since maybe 2013. And the company that I work for has purchased the building and is giving it a massive overhaul, electrical systems, HVAC systems, the facade, and our company will be moving in there, and we have a tenant relocating from the suburbs. Chase Design is coming from Skinny Atlas and will be in that building. And again, if we also think about now, we have more people in the building who are supporting the coffee shops and supporting the beautiful retail clothing outlets, and who, right, and who are buying donuts and who are getting their hair cut, and who are, right, we have more people who are able to support more entrepreneurs, hopefully. I think that's the goal that we're all hoping for, is that there's more and more positive momentum and seeing the connections that you and I see between real estate development and overall economic development in our community for entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Oh my God, Christine, so much just good stuff in this conversation today. I'd love to, Carolyn, just check in with the folks that are on Zoom. If we have any questions from any of the folks that are on Zoom, feel free to turn on your camera and ask them, or just put them in the chat. And then, Carolyn, would you mind checking and asking our admin if there's anything on Facebook? Nothing on Facebook. Okay, awesome. So ladies that are on Zoom, any questions for Carolyn, for Christine and I about this awesome discussion we've been having? I'm happy to pause a bit. And nothing in the chat box. So, I found this to be a dynamic discussion. Christine, is there anything else you feel like you'd like to share about either of the phases in either of the examples that you've given us as we wait for more questions to roll in?
No, if there's anything that I can do, people could feel free to reach out, right? Or just, even if I'm pointing them in the right direction of go talk to someone. You and I both, the one thing we do share is we like to connect people with one another. So if there any dot connecting that I can do of hooking people up if they want to learn more, or they're interested in any topics, feel free to just shoot me an email and I can do a couple of Google searches, send some hyperlinks, send some people to talk to. I'm happy to help going forward in any way that I can. Yeah. Start paying attention. I think if you've ever worked as a waitress in a restaurant, then at that point, when you go to a restaurant, you never quite view it the same way. You start noticing all the things that you never used to notice before, how things work. If you're interested in real estate, start asking questions and thinking about it. How did this building get to this point? Who bought this land? What did they go through to get it? Start reading the newspaper. I know the newspaper tries to cover projects that are in development. Learn who those people are. What are those projects all about? City of Syracuse has a lot of really exciting initiatives down in the south end of the city. Syracuse Surge, what is that about? The STEAM School, JMA is going into an old factory. There are really a lot of exciting real estate projects happening right now, I feel like, in Syracuse. And definitely try to, if you're interested at all, take the time to read more about those projects. We have another amazing client here at VIP, Pathfinder Bank. We love Pathfinder Bank. And I know you know some folks over there, right? They bought a building, an old historic mansion, 506 West Onondaga Street, dilapidated building. A lot of people would have said, just tear it down. Pathfinder wants to expand financial services in that neighborhood. They talked to a lot of neighborhood residents, community members. People brought Pathfinder and said, look at this amazing building, look at its amazing potential. And Pathfinder, to its great credit, they hired VIP, and we helped come up with a design that meets the needs of that bank and all of its functional requirements that can exist in an old house. And if you go drive by 506 West Onondaga Street, I think the before and afters on that project are just going to be amazing, and how great for a community that they have new services. And also just that when you're driving down the street, there's something breathtakingly beautiful. And what does that do to just inspire people, right, for the future? Yeah.
I love that project specifically. I cannot wait to see it come through.
Yeah.
So we did actually have
that one. I had the luxury of working on that one too. And yeah, it's a great project, great clients. It's going to have a great community benefit. You know, it's one of the joys of my job here is getting to work on things that have so much social impact. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we've got a couple questions that came in, Christine. I'll start with the first one. What are the pros and cons of new construction versus retrofit space?
Oh, that's amazing. And thank you for that question. And somebody should slap me on the hand for not having talked about that, right? I mean, I think we're all living in a world where hopefully all of us have this heightened sensibility about the environment and issues around sustainability. And I know that in the construction industry across the nation, there are a lot of difficult, you know, people are taking a hard look at how can we be doing new construction in a way that is as environmentally responsible as possible. I think lots of people want to start with the starting point that I think I shared, that where you have an existing building, if you can reuse an existing building instead of demolishing it and starting all over again. There are scores of studies on this, and anybody could Google this and read tons of research on the, you know, economics and environmental impacts of what's called in our industry adaptive reuse often of buildings instead of demolition and new construction. And there's lots and lots of literature on the topic of protecting green space, suburban sprawl. For the people who are really following urban planning and public administration, I think there are increasingly moves afoot to protect farmland, to protect green space, to avoid overstretching public infrastructure, right? And trying to be really careful about keeping development. There are people who are, you know, can get very political. There are people who just feel everything should be very free market and little regulation and little planning and just let the market dictate what's going to happen. And then there are others who have, I think, what is a longer term view on stewardship of our environment and our community. And are we being thoughtful and are we being careful about the places where we develop and what that development means for schools, for sewer lines, for firefighters, and so on? Are we sure that we're investing resources in a thoughtful way for the benefit of the community as a whole? And so I think that was a long-winded way of saying that in general, I think there are values that go with that and where you stand on any given political topic. But in general, if you can reuse an existing building or keep development in certain areas, you know, I think there's a heightened awareness of that being an environmentally responsible thing to do. Having said that, there are certain cases where if you're a manufacturer and you have certain requirements for power, for heights of buildings, for dock doors and heights of dock doors, you know, if you have specific needs, it really might be the case that the amount of time and energy and effort you are going to have in trying to find a building and retrofit that building to meet your needs, at that point, you might as well start from scratch and get what you really need built to suit exactly what you want. It might really be the more economic way to go, the more efficient way to go. And I would say, and in that case, have faith that you will get the new building, ground up construction that meets your needs and again, has that community benefit. In the end, I believe the community is going to benefit from the fact that we had real estate taxes being paid on a vacant piece of land. And now a community has a new building that has an employer in it that is creating jobs and that is paying real estate taxes on a brand new 76,000 square foot manufacturing facility instead of 10 vacant acres of land, right? So new construction definitely does have a community benefit for sure. Just be through, are you the end user, or are you thinking it from the community perspective, or both?
Awesome. One other question before we wrap up. So how do you define whether an opportunity has a value add angle component? In other words, how do you identify those assets providing a value uplift? It's a very interesting question.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And again, you could look at it in a really narrow lens, and I would love to talk to this questioner more, because there's the value add if we're just talking about the financial sense. Am I going to invest money in this project and get a return on my investment, or the investment of the real estate developers, right? Are we adding value? We're putting money in, we're not putting it in just to break even, we're putting money in to make money with this endeavor. Then there's the value add, that is the stuff that I know aligns with your heart and mind around the community benefit, right? And is there a value add to the greater good? One would hope that right, both things can be accomplished, right? The people can be investing money in real estate and getting a return on that investment, and we're able to see the greater benefit of that one project on the community in which it exists, right? Two are not mutually exclusive. In fact, yeah, I like the idea of a virtuous cycle there.
Yeah. Oh my God, such a good point. It's almost like evaluating the intrinsic return or this qualitative return against also the quantitative financial return. So very cool. Christine, I just so appreciate your time, your wisdom and expertise. Thank you so much for sharing that with us today. Before we close out, would you mind sharing how people can reach you if they have follow-up questions?
Sure, I get a lot of email. I'm happy to get more email. My email address here at the office is that's for Christine, C Stevens, and it's STEVENS @vipstructures.org. Any emails that I get, do me a favor and put WISE in the subject heading, and it'll catch my attention, and I'll be sure to respond in any way that I can. I'm happy to help anybody in the organization, and I want to just make sure that I've said words of encouragement for all the female entrepreneurs. Caeresa, I know you to be completely amazing, a trailblazer, a beacon of light. And I'm sorry I don't have the chance to know all the people listening today, but I'm really glad to have been asked to be here, and hopefully in any way, shape, or form been able to answer any questions or inspire anybody. And if I can help anybody going forward, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, we were so inspired and so helpful. Again, any of the women who are watching on Facebook or watching the recording or on our Zoom today, please.
Oh, hold on. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you. I just noticed cstevens@vipstructures.com. I don't know if I misspoke or got mistyped there, but somebody typed it as .org, but it's .com, vipstructures.com. Okay.
Awesome. No, thanks for the correction. Okay. So just a reminder, again, I am Caeresa Richardson with one of the business coaches at the Wise Women's Business Center. If you are navigating this process or thinking about navigating this process as an entrepreneurial venture, please connect with the Wise Center. That is one of the things we love to do, is help women with our one-on-one coaching to navigate business ideas and entrepreneurial ventures and strategies. So with that said, Christine and everyone watching, would love to thank you all for your questions and for the dynamic discussion, and wish you all a great day.
Thank you.